This here is another viewer's broken gaming PC. It apparently doesn't power on. Now I'm just gonna jump straight into the owner's description because it sounds like this PC has been through a lot. It is quite the doozy. He says, the issue that I'm having with my computer is that occasionally it will turn off with no warning, no overheating of any sorts. This originally started happening back in November, so initially I brought it to Best Buy. They proceeded to tell me it was my power supply, but I had warranty, so it was replaced for free. That was the first time. The second time, they told me it was my GPU, and they replaced my GPU with a 3060. I'm not sure if that 3060 is in the room with us. I think this is actually a 2060 Super, so not sure what happened to that card. The fourth time, he says, I went, they said it was my storage. Fourth and final, I think he meant third time there. Now he's saying fourth and final time, they updated his BIOS. My computer issue stayed very apparent. One time I got it back and it didn't even turn on, so I don't even know how they gave it to me. I got it back late January for the fourth time and I didn't have any issues until today, same issue, and if I go to Best Buy, I feel like they're not going to fix it. At last, I'm not sure if I'm good for fix or flop. It was recommended by a friend. I was gonna try this before I gave it over to Best Buy. Yeah, sounds like Best Buy is not really doing what they're supposed to be doing with this rig. If you keep having to send it back, especially to the same place over and over again, I think that's a pretty good sign that it shouldn't be going there in the future. Now there's a lot to unpack here and I'm not totally sure where to start. Now the owner is a bit on the inexperienced side, I would say, with PCs. I mean, the fact that he's giving it to Best Buy, or I'm assuming Geek Squad more specifically, to have them fix these rigs, it could either be because the owner knows it's under warranty, so it wouldn't make any sense for him to touch anything himself, or it could be because he just doesn't know a lot about gaming PCs. And again, that's totally fine. That's what we're here for, right? But I'm not entirely sure, I suppose, after reading the description, if this rig is actually going to fire up. If it does, maybe it will just randomly power off like it was before, again, with supposedly no overheating issues. We're definitely going to confirm all of that ourselves, especially since we have an AIO attached here. Though this is a newer Corsair AIO, I don't expect it's going to be to blame. But we should still cover all of our bases just to be safe. Welcome to Fix or Flop, a playlist where we attempt to fix broken gaming PCs like this one for free. We don't charge for labor or replacement hardware if necessary, and that's thanks to your viewership. Even if you're watching with an ad blocker, even if you're just opening it up and running it in the background and not paying attention, those clicks are super helpful. Thank you so much. It allows us to continue doing what we're doing. By the way, if you have a broken PC and you'll get a chance to have it fixed for free here, there's a form in the description. Check it out, submit photos, brief description of your issue, your tech specs, and we'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. All right, you ready for this one? Let's dive in. I'm pretty confident we'll have it fixed by the end of this one. I hope you'll stay with me.
If you're looking to save some serious money on Corsair gaming PCs, consider refurbished and Revival series builds. Professionally restored, performance ready, and nicely discounted. Both lineups are tested, cleaned, and repackaged with either 90-day or 1-year warranties, with the key distinctions being price and quality. Revival pre-builds cover both grade A and B products, which may have some cosmetic imperfections, but will still be fully functional otherwise, while refurbished units both function and appear like new, shipping with all original parts and accessories. For consumer tech, generally speaking, more choices equals more better, so having the option to choose between discounted and even more discounted with minor trade-offs means you can shop flexibly with virtually any healthy budget between Vengeance 5 and 7000 series gaming PCs, Corsair 1 pre-builts, and more. In a market that seems to grow more expensive by the day, it doesn't hurt to give these a look. Learn more about Corsair refurbished and Revival series gaming PCs via the sponsor links below.
Right off the bat, I've got to say, I like the way this rig looks. Now, it is on the older side. It doesn't use the most up-to-date hardware, and that's totally fine. I love the way these RTX 2060 Founders cards look. This is a super variant, of course. It does have the side-connected 8-pin, which is pretty cool. We have a Corsair 240mm AIO. It does appear to be on the newer side. The motherboard is actually an MATX form factor in a mid-tower, so you can have some empty space below the graphics card if you're wondering. That's not the end of the world, but something worth noting. It's a B550M from ASUS, which means we are on the Ryzen platform here, a Ryzen 5 3600 to be exact, and again, coupled with the 2060 Super, it makes for a fairly decent, I would say 1080p gaming rig here in 2026, and I believe he has 16 gigs of DDR4 from Corsair as well. For storage, it looks like there's an ADATA 500 gig SSD in here, as well as a 2 terabyte hard disk drive, and as for power, there's an RM850E from Corsair. So yeah, pretty cool PC if I do say so myself. Not the most powerful again, but it doesn't need to be if you've managed expectations. What is not cool, however, is the fact that this rig apparently cuts off like in the middle of gaming or whatever the owner might be doing. It should never power off abruptly under any circumstance. That's usually a sign of something pretty serious, whether it be power related or overheating related. We still need to confirm that the rig doesn't overheat, even though the owner says it doesn't. We don't know what he used, what software he was using to verify that. We need to be able to see that with our own eyes. A very important part of the troubleshooting process. Do not trust anything anyone says about tech. Always verify it yourself. You will thank yourself later. Trust me. So I suppose what we should do with this one is attempt to power it on. Now again, based on the sort of convoluted description, I don't know for sure if it's even going to power on. If it does, I'm assuming it will abruptly power off at some point. Power and a portable monitor are connected just in case. I'm not totally sure what's going to happen when we push the power button here. Let's give it a whirl. Alrighty, it does power up. It's pretty loud, but it is settling. And yeah, it does look like it's going to post. All right, now it's probably gonna load into Windows as well. I'm gonna let it do its thing. I think what we're gonna have to do is stress test this rig in order to get it to actually want to shut down. I don't wanna just leave it idling for potentially several hours. It's just not an efficient use of my time. If it's going to shut down at any point for a hardware reason, it will probably do so again under a pretty extreme situation, like if we run Prime 95 or Firmark, for example, which are my go-tos for that sort of thing. Yep, so we're on Windows. I'm gonna log in and get those programs installed. By the way, I did notice upon startup, these fans actually shut off, which could indicate some sort of power delivery issue, but they have turned back on since logging in. So I think this is like a Corsair IQ initialization thing where Windows actually needs to fully load in so that the programs can kick on to then turn on the LEDs. Now, I don't always show this, but the owner actually already has NZXT Cam installed, and you can see that occasionally his CPU load will jump up to like 20–30% and his temperature shoot up accordingly. Now, mid 40s for an AIO is not unheard of if a system is at idle and thermally equalized. I will say that we've only had the system on for probably 3 or 4 minutes. So I'm not totally sure yet, and you can see it drops down. So it definitely hasn't thermally equalized yet. But the fact that it's shooting up to 40, 45 under just a tiny bit of load, I mean, that could indicate that we maybe do have a thermal issue. Ooh, Kitty Cat is interested as well. He's inspecting. He's trying to figure out what's wrong. We're gonna figure it out, buddy. We're gonna, don't clip your nose in the fan, buddy. Okay, we're going back over here. So here we go, first things first, I wanna try Prime 95. That's the one I'm most dubious about. Is that the right word? We're gonna go ahead and, there are some weird hangups. It gets frozen right now. Trying to move around. Anytime I try to open something, it just gets a bit weird. So we're gonna run that, just stressing, and we're gonna go ahead and give it a whirl. Let's monitor these CPU temps up here. So our load should shoot up to like 100%. I mean, Prime 95 is gonna absolutely stress the crap out of this chip. And this is only a Ryzen 5 3600, so I don't expect temperatures to hit T-junction here unless we're running some crazy manual overclock. You can see our frequency just below, so if we are throttling, that should be apparent. And there you go, temperatures have dropped pretty quickly. I imagine, yeah, it's already throttling pretty hard, but I don't see any sort of like instability here. Everything seems okay. See, all around, clearly we're under a very heavy load, but our temperatures have not shot up into, like crazy territory. I mean, mid 60s with Prime 95. I think it's less of an indication of how cool this chip actually runs. It's not like he won the silicon lottery, at least from what I can tell so far. I think this is more indicative of the board and the CPU itself, maybe the BIOS, pulling back voltage in order to keep frequency lower, to keep those temps in check. Because I imagine if this didn't happen, things would go sideways. But this is normal behavior. And we saw this in the last Fix Your Flop episode as well, right? Chips will scale back frequency. It's not unheard of, especially under torture scenarios like this one. So far, again, the entire operating system is still stable. It is a bit choppy. I'm not sure why that's the case, but the rig hasn't shut off yet. So, I guess all we can really do from here is maybe add Firmark to the equation. We'll see what happens when we heavily stress the GPU at the same time. If anything does happen, I imagine it would be at this point of all others, just because we are pushing both the GPU and CPU at the same time to their limits. Let's go ahead and start our CPU torture test again. We can also confirm in CAM software, yep, that our CPU is under a pretty heavy load. And then what we're gonna do is click Run Test on Firmark's side, which should also stress our GPU. So there you go. So that load's gonna shoot up, and especially in a scenario where you have infrequent like power down situations, it is super important that you use software like this to test those worst case scenarios to ensure that those cutoffs don't happen when you're doing anything sensitive. I'm gonna let both of these run for a good maybe 20 to 30 minutes to be on the safe side and report back if anything happens. I'm also gonna throw the left side panel on just to simulate something we'd see more in the real world.
Meanwhile,
I just went and grabbed lunch. I'm not sure how long it's been. I think it's been longer than 30 minutes at this point. Let me see if I can slide over FurMark here. It'll tell us how long this test has been running. So it looks like, what are we at now? An hour? It's been, yeah, twice as long as I anticipated it would be at the start. An hour and still no instability. This system is perfectly fine. Temperatures for our GPU and hotspot are 78 and 92 degrees Celsius respectively. That's not out of the realm of acceptability, I would say, especially for FurMark and a 2060 Super. And as for the CPU backend cam, you can see we're running at just over 4 gigahertz right now based on the way temperatures and the load has fared over the past hour. You can see we're just above 70 C. So for 3600 again, that's not unheard of. This is pretty much typical Prime 95 behavior, special for lower TDP CPUs. I'm struggling to find a problem with this computer. I don't know if it's possible, maybe we have like a dying hard disk drive or something. His ADATA boot drive looks good, health status 50%, and you can see sometimes in here, the number of writes and things. It overall doesn't seem out of the ordinary. It is a fairly heavily used SATA SSD, but it's not like screaming at me or anything. As for the 2 terabyte hard disk drive, pretty much the same story. This one's been used quite a bit. It's been powered on for a very long time. I don't know what else to really do though, other than maybe to try loading up a game, because that's when the owner said that the PC would crap the bed, right? As if we start a game up and then it would just randomly shut off. So, I mean, beyond what FurMark and Prime 95 already do, I'm not sure what a game is going to do extra other than maybe pull data from said hard disk drive if the games are stored there. The owner had Warframe on here. It hadn't been updated in a little while, so I'm just gonna see if I can get something to pop up in this scenario. If it doesn't, I'm just gonna stop here. I mean, I can't just go chasing rainbows. There might be something outside of my control, outside of my field of view here, maybe like a power cable or a bad display cable that's causing the symptoms the owner's describing. So far, the rig as a whole seems super healthy. I don't see any frame skipping, frame time spikes. It's all very smooth. I mean, for a 3600 and 2060 Super combo, this game actually plays really well. So yeah, I mean, again, what more can I do here? I'll probably just stand here and let the game idle for like, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes. I'm not gonna let it run for several hours. Again, I cannot make a habit of crossing my fingers and waiting entire days for something to go wrong. If it's not readily repeatable, it's not something I can readily fix. The screen went black off camera for a few seconds, but that was actually just the screensaver. So that's perfectly normal. And just chilling here in this game, haven't seen any issues in roughly 20 minutes. And I don't think we're going to. I've left the side panel on. You see how bad the glare is. That's why I typically take these off when I'm filming videos like this. But I just have not been able to, under any circumstance, get the system to act up, which I suppose is a good thing. Like, I know it can be frustrating, but if I can't replicate the issue here, again, my hands are more or less tied. I don't want to start poking and prodding and trying to get something to act up when in every test that we run, it behaves normally. This is what you want at the end of the day. All I can really say is that the owner probably has some sort of issue with either his power cable or power delivery from his outlet or power strip. We have seen this a few times in the playlist where I haven't been able to get a system to misbehave, and we can trace it back to, say, a bad outlet or maybe a faulty breaker or something like that in a switch panel. You just never really know. These are things I can't account for without being physically present in the room where the system is normally connected. I'm not gonna make a habit of just traveling to and from folks' houses. It's just not realistic in this business model. And so all I can really account for is what's here. And what's here seems to be working great. I do think it is worth checking behind the motherboard tray in the off chance maybe we have like a partially loosened cable or something. This is a modular power supply, so we can check all of that as well, just to be on the safe side. But I just, so far, nothing is jumping out at me, and that kind of worries me, but at the same time, Ooh. Okay. No? Wait, where's that cable running? So this is running from 12 volt connector on the power supply side, and it runs straight into a 6+2 pin. But on the 12 volt side, it looks like this power cable is not seated flush with the unit. And this is a pretty common thing I found with these 12 volt high power connectors. If they aren't seated all the way, yes, at minimum, you could have performance issues, but you could also potentially cause fires. You get severe burns and things around the connector itself because these pins don't always make great contact, and there can be at times a lot of power moving through these. Oh, and would you look at that? This actually splits into 2 different 8 pins. I thought it was strange that like a 12 volt connector would only run into a single 6+2 pin. I thought that was just really weird. It didn't make any sense. That's why. So it actually splits into 2 8s, and one of these is currently connected to that 2060 Super. Oh boy. It's not gonna be one of those like super satisfying fixes where there's a clear before and after, but I can tell you it's likely that's what was causing problems. So yeah, just to demonstrate here, I'm gonna actually seat this all the way in, the way that it should be, and you'll see, yep, that gap fully disappears. In fact, the connector itself sort of sinks into the PSU housing a tad. This is how it should be. You should hear an audible click, and if not, you should at the very least not be able to see any of that 12 volt female side showing. It should be completely covered by the cable. I've also noticed, you can see right there, so that little center standoff is actually a post, and you can use it to align your motherboard when you're installing it in your case for the first time. That actually isn't seated right. It looks like it's sort of sitting on it, but not around it. So what I'm gonna do is loosen the other screws holding this board down and make sure that's settled properly. I have checked behind the motherboard tray, everything is square. We don't have standoffs in places we shouldn't. In fact, we have a couple standoffs that are missing. So the board isn't bolted down in every possible location. It's not the end of the world, something we can easily fix. But the fact that it's kind of sitting on this post and not trying to move it into place without taking all this other hardware out. I don't know if I have a choice here. It's just not a good idea for it to be sitting on that post because that can flex the board a bit. That could lead to some broken solder points and whatnot, and potentially create instability. Now, this goes without saying, right? We tested the rig pretty extensively and no issues popped up. So I don't imagine this is actually keeping the rig from, being stable, I guess, long term. But since I see it as an issue or potential one at the least, I'm going to fix it. Come on, graphics card. There we go, nice and easy. Okay, screw it. I'm removing all of these screws and we're just gonna screw it. I'm funny. I am funny. There we go. That's how it should be. We just had a couple of these screws fighting us. So now it is slotted perfectly around that little reference standoff. We'll use some screws to tighten it all back down. Unfortunately, I fear there won't be a smoking gun with this episode, and sometimes this happens. It is what it is. It comes with the territory of sort of venturing into the unknown without seeing a rig in person and still agreeing to look at it and make a video about it. Sometimes we have misses like these. They aren't necessarily flops, we just haven't found anything wrong. And despite finding, again, a loose 12 volt high power cable, as well as an improperly seated motherboard, the system still checked out fine under torture tests before those discoveries. So possibly we mitigated something by fixing those 2 things we just found. But beyond that, again, there's not gonna be like an aha moment, where it's like, oh, well, that's why it wasn't working. Sometimes that's how tech is. Is Windows seriously performing an update right now? I wanted to film an outro, and now it's resetting itself, updating. I don't know what it's doing. It's not anything related to the instability we saw, but the fact that I've been able to get it to run just fine and connect it to the internet tells me that the owner hasn't been able to actually use this in a stable manner for a good while. So I do not doubt, why would he waste his time here bringing a rig out that he knows full well I'm gonna fully inspect and find no wrong with? Like, it doesn't make any sense why he would waste that time or mine. I think what he's seeing is real. I just think that the cause of what he's seeing is outside of the scope of this rig. Again, the small problems that we found with the cable connections and the motherboard seating could have led to instability and potentially under like hours of sustained gaming, but there's no way to know for sure unless I let this rig sit for several hours, and I just don't have the time to do that. Unfortunately, with the way that stuff moves here in the YouTube space and the sheer number of rigs that need fixing in the Central Florida area, I have to move on. I can thankfully though report that his rig, at least so far, through all the tests that we've run, is very, very stable. Thank you again so much for clicking on this video. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing below, and remember that you can submit a form to have your system, if it's broken, potentially fixed for free. And I try to plug that every episode because I want folks to feel like they have an option beyond, again, something like Geek Squad or something like, I don't know, as much as I hate to say it, even like the Knowledge Bar, other places that advertise PC repair services. I'm not trying to steal away their business. I'm just trying to give folks an opportunity to have it looked at by somebody who has dabbled in the space for a decade or more, and who can get things up and running without charging anything. I personally think that like just, you know, charging for a diagnostic, like I understand there's time there. I understand why people charge it, but I'm in a position where I don't have to because I can monetize my time on a site like YouTube thanks to your clicks. So it's a great win-win for the community, I think. And again, it's all because you guys watch these videos. Be sure to stick around for the next. My name is Greg. Thanks for learning with me.